Hello and welcome back to another episode of Age Better, where each week we take a deep dive into all the ways we can feel better, look better, live better, and yep, age better. I'm your host, Barbara Hannah Grufferman. So today we're doing something a little different, but really special. We're replaying an episode from the truly terrific podcast, A Certain Age, hosted by the super cool Katie Fogarty. And if you're a woman in midlife, and I guess you are because you're listening to this show, you are probably already following A Certain Age podcast. But if you're not, definitely take a listen to this episode and then follow A Certain Age wherever you like to listen to podcasts, including Apple Podcasts and Spotify. And in this episode, really, really fun, I had the pleasure of being Katie's guest. She's been a guest on my show, and now I was a guest on her show because it's women supporting women, which is a really cool thing to do. Anyway, where we chatted about my personal journey of taking up running. And if you all have been following me for a while, you know that I started running when I turned 50 and then started running marathons all around the age 50. And this episode, I got the chance to chat about how I started, why I started, and why I've become such a big believer in the transformative power of running. I really, really, really am. And it doesn't matter how fast you go, how slow you go. It just doesn't matter. Now at the age of 67, as I train for marathon number 18, it's my great hope that you'll feel just a wee bit motivated to try running too, whatever your age. I'm always amazed at the number of people who have running a marathon on their personal to-do list. So maybe, just maybe, this episode will kickstart your own marathon journey. And as I like to say, I always say, it's never too late. Never, ever. So you know what to do. Lace up your shoes, take me with you while you go out for a walk or a run, and join us for this fun conversation on A Certain Age with Katie Fogarty. Stay tuned. You can run at any age, any ability, any shape, any size. Whether you've never run a marathon, whether you've never run at all, and injury-free.
Welcome to A Certain Age, a show for women who are unafraid to age out loud. Beauties, I'm going to be honest with you. I know you've heard me say countless times, you are never too old to do that thing, try something new, to choose a new adventure. But truthfully, I've always thought I would get around to running a marathon. And lately, I've begun to think maybe that ship has sailed. I'm 54, and the last time I ran, it was a mad dash through Grand Central Station to make a train. So I am excited to hang today with a guest who is both running and reinvention goals. Barbara Hannah Grufferman is an author, pro-age advocate, and the host of the popular podcast, Age Better. Like many of us, Barbara turned 50 and realized that what it takes to be fit, feel fabulous, and be healthy looks way different than it did in our 30s and 40s. She turned to running to stay in shape and is now training for her 18th marathon. Running changed her life and career in countless surprising ways that we are going to get into on the show today. If you are curious about the intersection of fitness and reinvention, if marathons or a running practice are on your bucket list, or if you want ideas on aging well from a top-ranked health podcaster, stick around. This show is for you. Welcome, Barbara.
Hi, Katie. Thanks so much for having me on. I'm so excited to talk about one of my favorite topics in the whole world.
Yes, I'm so
running.
excited as well. I'm really thrilled to have you here. I've been a guest on your show. I know you've written 2 award-winning books on aging and life after 50. You really are an OG in the positive aging space, and we have so much to explore. But I do want to, start by hearing how you got going with running. 17 marathons is an incredible accomplishment, but you aren't done yet, right? You're training for your 18th. What made you take up running at 50?
I am. And normally I do the New York City Marathon because I do live in New York City. But this year in the fall, I'm going to be running the Chicago Marathon for the first time. And that will be number 18. And I'm really, really excited about this because I have 2 daughters, both in their 20s, both are runners. The younger one is a little bit more serious about her running than the older one. And she, Elizabeth, my younger one, is going to Chicago and run it with me. Now, with me is said very loosely. She is so super fast. She qualified for the Boston Marathon by running the New York City Marathon. So we're going to Chicago together, but then we will separate.
Oh my gosh. You guys are starting together, but you may not be finishing together. That's so...
Exactly right. And I'm a slow runner. I do run. I love running. I have a certain way of running, which I'll get into. But, I would never say I'm a speedy runner. But for me, I'm speedy. And that's
well, I
that's
absolutely
fine.
love that.
That's totally cool. No, I just want to say one thing, Katie, that you said in your intro is that the last time you ran was running for the train, I think, in Grand Central Station. I hated running, like so many of us. I absolutely hated running. And I, in fact, used to joke that, I used to go running after the Good Humor truck when I was a kid. And I would be the one in gym class when they were choosing people for the volleyball team or whatever team. My mantra was, don't make eye contact. Don't make eye contact. They won't choose you. Yeah, you don't want to be chosen. And that was me. I was that kid. And that was me really throughout my whole adult life. And, I dabbled in a few things. Like I did Jane Fonda when she came out and for like a hot second. And then, you know what life is like. I had a very booming career in magazine publishing, and I eventually got married, eventually had 2 children, and traveling around the world for my business, and no time for me. And that's very typical of women, as we know. You've had so many women on your show who share that same narrative. And so fast forward to I was like 49, about to turn 50, and I'm kind of gaining weight and I'm saying, what the heck is going on? And then I am 50 and I take a walk with my dog in New York City and I fall not too fast, not too far, not too hard. And I broke my arm. I was like, wait a minute, what? Why in the world did that happen? Why in the world did I break my arm just by walking? I don't even know what I tripped on, Katie. It was bizarre. And then I went for my first bone density test and I realized I had low bone density. Then I realized, because at that time, this is 17 years ago, let's create the context, nobody was talking about menopause. It was still very much swept under the rug. We weren't talking about what happens to a woman's body when she goes through menopause, what happens to her bones, what happens to her midline, her weight, and everything else that we now know to be true as a woman goes through menopause. So that was the context. I was like confused, like, what the heck is going on with my body? Is this what 50 is all about? And it was that kind of thing. And then all of a sudden, now I have to tell you, where I live in New York City, my apartment is literally at mile 17 and a half of the New York City Marathon course. We always know somebody running in the marathon. I always did know someone, either a teacher or a friend. And this particular year, I want to say it's around 2008, something like that. This particular year, one of my daughter's teachers was running in the marathon. So we're all standing on the corner, neighbors, my husband, my 2 daughters. My younger daughter at this point was about 9. And we're just watching it. I'm watching all these people go by, Katie, like, wait a minute, how can they run 26.2 miles? Are they crazy?
I know, it's
like,
pretty
how
astonishing.
can anybody do this? Or wait a minute, want to do this was even the bigger question. But then I noticed for the first time, they were all different sizes and shapes and ages and abilities. And there were fast ones and slow ones and walkers. And I thought, wow, a lot of different kinds of people are running marathons. And so all of a sudden, out of the blue, my youngest daughter, Elizabeth, the one who is, the speedy one in the family, turns to me and says, hey, Mom, I want to hold up a sign that says, go, Mom, go. Because she was holding up a sign for her teacher. And then everybody looked at me. My husband smirked. I went, I don't know how, and I don't know when, but yes, I am going to do this. That literally was my life-changing moment.
I love that. I love that. First of all, I love that you were sort of nudged into this by a family member and that you were standing there being inspired. I mean, I think the reason why I sort of have been kicking around the idea of doing this is I too at one point lived near the race route in the park, and my husband and I would go out. You would watch people coming over at like hour 6, right? They're running in full firefighter gear, or they're running it on crutches or with one leg. And it's the race along the track of a marathon is some of the most inspirational landscape you can imagine, because you're watching people just sort of putting themselves out there, doing it at every level. I love that you shared you ran your own race. So walk us through how it happened. Your daughter held up a sign and now you're 18 marathons later. Like, how did you go from being on the sidelines to being in action?
Really in the very thick of it. I mean, I'm such an active participant in the running community and have built a team for the Bone Health and Osteoporosis Foundation, where I have been a trustee, a board member for 10 years. And a few years ago, started the Be Bone Strong New York City Marathon team. So we do have a team. I'm the team manager. I'm very, very proud of this and get a lot of people motivated to run on behalf of bone health. I did mention I did break my arm, and that has been a very big part of my own story as well. Bone health is super duper important to me. My own mother fell in 2018 and broke her hip. She never returned home, could not, was confined to a wheelchair, health spiraled downward. And then in 2021, she passed away. So bone health is critically important to all of us, especially postmenopausal women. And it's very, very important to me. But how did it get started? So just getting back to that one pivotal moment. And I joke with my daughter all the time about this. She then said that to me. I then said, yes, I will do it. I don't know how I'm going to do it, but I will do it. Literally, Katie, the next day in the Wall Street Journal, it was Monday was the next day because it's always on a Sunday. There was an article, in-depth Q&A with Jeff Galloway. Now, Jeff Galloway, for those of you who don't know him, he is an Olympian. He's a man in his 70s at this point. And while he could have taken a path to, having this pro career in running and sprinting and all that. And he's really an endurance runner. Instead, he took a pivot, right, Katie, your favorite word. He took a pivot and he decided, I am going to have, this is back in the 80s or actually late 70s. I am going to help people get off the couch and move their bodies more. I'm going to help them that is my mission in life. So it was a whole article about him and his program. And for those of you who are not familiar with him, I encourage you to go onto his website, Galloway.com, jeffgalloway.com. And it's a run, walk, run program. Now, some people may have their own method of doing that, their own way of doing run, walk, but he has a very planned out way of creating your own ratio between running and walking that really works best for you so that you can run at any age, any ability, any shape, any size, whether you've never run a marathon, whether you've never run at all, and injury-free, which is a very, very critical component of his program. And that's really important to me because who in the world wants to get injured? You don't want to get injured.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. We are going to be heading into a quick commercial break, Barbara. When we come back, I want to pick this up. Barbara, we're back from the break. When we headed into it, you told us about the Jeff Galloway Run, Walk, Run program. I am definitely going to go to his website and check it out. You had me at injury free and you had me at getting off the sofa, right? Because you make it sound easy. He's helping train people who are sort of beginners. So I'm assuming you did this program and that sort of put you in action. Do you train all year long? If you're doing 18 marathons, I'm assuming running is a part of your daily life. Is that true? Or do you take periods for rest and recovery? What does it look like for you?
Oh, that's a great question, Katie. I'm always in the state of training because we only mentioned the 17 marathons I've done to date, but I've done countless. I truly don't know how many I've done. Half marathons, 10Ks, 5Ks, 4-miler. fill in the blank, lots of different races. So I'm always in training for something because I live in New York City. There are always races happening in Central Park or around the city in Queens or Brooklyn or where have you, the Bronx. And I sign up for all of them and, I try to make all of them. So I'm always in this state of training. And for me, that is a really big motivator to keep me always in a state of training. So therefore, by the time I start serious training for a marathon, and you want to start training like 5-6 months before and then build up your mileage to race day for a marathon. I've already had my foundation is always there. My fitness foundation is solid because I'm always in a state of training. Now, listen, everyone who's thinking about a marathon, first of all, as Katie pointed out, with this program, really anybody can do it. Do not let age or ability or your size or your shape or anything like that deter you from checking this out, because he has allowed, I know so many people who are part of, for example, the New York City Galloway group. There are groups all over the country, all over the world, and people call themselves
hysterical.
Jeffers. Yeah. Oh, I've met Jeffers in Edinburgh, Scotland, while running the marathon there. Because my daughter, as you know, Katie, I told you, the same younger daughter, she's a big part of this whole story, right? She went to the University of St. Andrews. And so together we decided to run the Edinburgh Marathon.
I love that. And for listeners who don't know, that's where my daughter Grace went to. It's a wonderful school on a beautiful stretch of Scottish coastline. And Barbara and I share that in common as well.
Just a fantastic place.
But I have not done the Edinburgh Marathon. So maybe we need to share that. Maybe that should be my goal.
I have to tell you, Katie, you know what? You really should. I highly recommend it to everyone because it's flat and a little hill, I believe, in the beginning, but it's basically flat and it's along the coast. It's absolutely beautiful. So it's a really lovely.
You've done so many, I love that you did this in Scotland. And I learned in prepping for this show that there are marathons all over the world, obviously, but there are 6 that are considered to be the biggies, London, New York, Boston, Berlin, Chicago, Tokyo. Which of the 6 have you completed? I did my research. I did my homework
very easily.
Do you have a favorite, or is there one you haven't completed yet? Is that why you're training for Chicago?
I have friends. This is really very funny. I have friends in my running group who decided to make running all 50 states their mission, and they've done it. Some of them are still on their way and have a few more states left to go. And some of them have said, I'm going to do that. I have one friend who said, I'm going to do that, as well as all of this, what they call the 6 majors, the ones you just mentioned, as well as one on each continent. He has done all.
Wow.
Think about that.
That's amazing.
On every
That's
continent.
so cool.
I mean, that's crazy, right?
I'm trying to work my way up to one.
Yeah.
I'm pretty knocked out by
and
this.
He just finished. He did the Boston Marathon, and that was his last to complete all of those sets. But anyway, I digress. So the answer is, no, I primarily run the New York City Marathon. During COVID, I ran 2 virtual marathons, which is, oh my gosh, everyone, if you ever want to really put your mental abilities and stamina and endurance to a test, do a virtual marathon because you are alone.
Are you on a treadmill or just keeping your own time running through?
I'm a no treadmill person.
Okay.
Let's just talk about the benefits of running for a second. Let's just shift gears. I mean,
Sure.
Not only does so many benefits, not only does running keep your bones dense, because it's weight bearing. It's also a cardio workout. It helps your heart, helps your mood, can help you to maintain your ideal weight once you get there, whatever that weight is. It has so many benefits, but it also is so meditative. Now, when I do my long training runs, as I mentioned before, when you're training for a marathon, you have to build up your mileage. So the typical program, whether it's Galloway or some other program, looks something like this. You do 3 to 4 shorter runs during the week, and those should always include speed work, hill repeats, so that your body gets used to running up and down hills, because the New York City Marathon is insidious.
Sure, it's very hilly. All those bridges. Bridges add up to serious hills.
Serious hills. And I hear them like next to me, like, what? Another hill? Are you kidding me? It's really wild. And so speed work, hill repeats and things like that. And then just like a normal 5 or 6 mile run. And then once a week, you need to have that long endurance run, which is usually run a little slower.
And when you say long,
okay.
What are we talking about?
Okay, you sure you want to know this, everyone? I don't want to deter anyone.
I'm curious. Our listeners are curious.
Okay.
We're curious,
So if you were to follow Jeff Galloway's program, which I really encourage everyone to do because it's gotten me through 17 marathons and counting after 50, mind you, all after 50. You start with a base of 5 miles sometime in May. Let's just assume it's the New York City Marathon, which is November 3rd. Okay. So in May, 5 miles. And then the next week, it'll be 6 miles. And then you'll keep going up, not more than like 5%. And then you go up, but eventually you'll be getting to 12 miles, then 15 miles, and then 18 miles. Now, there are some programs that stop at 18 miles. I personally don't get that. Jeff Galloway doesn't understand that. He believes, are you ready for this? Your last,
oh my gosh.
which I do. So
I think I know what's coming.
You know what's
I think I know what's coming.
You know what's coming because it's so crazy, but I do it. Your last long run before a marathon religiously should be 3 weeks before. No closer and really no further. 3 weeks is like the sweet spot of your last long training run. Jeff Galloway believes that last long training run should be 30 miles.
What? Okay. No, I did not see that coming. I thought the marathon was coming. I thought he was
coming.
Like, you got to bust out a marathon. He wants you to go beyond.
Yeah, he wants you to go beyond. He said your body will be then so ready for that marathon. And then you
so relieved that it's shorter when you actually run it.
It's a mental thing as well as a physical thing. Therefore, I have run many more marathons than my official marathons in my life.
Oh my gosh. Jeff sounds like he's got a tough program. All right. Well, but honestly, but
but I have to tell you,
the New York City, he gets you off the sofa to doing that. I mean, people complete
you don't have to do 30.
That's
you don't
amazing.
have to do 30. However, the New York City Galloway program and really all the other programs around the country, as far as I know, their last long training run. And I usually go a little bit more to hit 30 after I leave them and go, sometimes somebody joins me. Every once in a while, I get one of the members to like continue on with me, but they go up to about 25 miles, 25.
Wait, so Barbara, so this is a great question. So do you, I mean, everyone's got their own personal way that they operate in the world, but do you think it's helpful to have running partners, accountability buddies, groups, or do you prefer, you said meditative, do you prefer to do these runs solo?
Okay, great question. So getting back to during the week, my runs are always alone. I'm alone. Sometimes I listen to music. I'm alone. Extremely meditative. Truly, that is when I meditate. Like people say, oh, do you meditate? I'll do micro meditations sometimes, like 5 minutes and really do my ohms and deep breathing. I'm a big believer in the deep breathing protocol to calm myself down and get more focused. However, real deep meditation happens when I'm running. But those long runs, everyone, I encourage you, find yourself a running group. If it's Galloway, great. If not, there are so many running groups out there. Every community has a running group. And if there isn't one, start one. But then you have your group. You talk about movies and restaurants and what's happening in your life and your bit, blah, 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 blah. Always something to talk about. Our mantra is for our running group is like, bring some information to the group every long run. Contribute.
Yeah, I love how this so community. You're reminding me that my good friend from high school, Brooke, moved to London, and her husband's job got her transferred there, and she found a running community, and it's literally women who have not yet run marathons that sort of band together to train together. So it's such a great way of being in community with somebody. And I think that there's a lot of groups that are out there that truly are for beginners, for anybody who wants to segue into this. So let's talk a little bit about like nutrition and exercises that you're doing beyond running to prepare for this, because I imagine there's more to do than simply run to be ready for a marathon.
Couldn't agree more. And thank you for bringing that up. When I first started running, as I said, around age 50, it was just about running. Like that was the only thing we were told to do, even with the Jeff Galloway program. And there was very little focus on the other very important component, which is strength training. But that's evolved, luckily, because if you also have, well, first of all, you should be strength training no matter what, even if you never run. If you decide I'm never going to take that step, it's not happening, you must be doing strength training. You must. This is an important part of your life to keep your bones strong. We also know strength training helps with brain health. We also know, Katie, you and I have both had Rebecca Rothstein on our shows talking about her view of strength training and progressive weight and how can actually, according to science now, the new studies can actually build back bone density.
Yeah,
where in the past,
she's a great resource.
She's amazing.
Great resource.
And in the past, all studies show that the only way to do that was with medication. And now we see that's no longer the case. So that's just an aside. And so I just want to really encourage everyone to 2 or 3 days a week of strength training is super, super important. And then there are, of course, specific exercises that are specific to running to help you be a stronger, more powerful, efficient runner that will also help you to be injury-free. And most of those really focus on your core, on your hamstrings, on your
Are these
glute
lunges?
muscles.
What are we talking about? Squats, lunges?
Yeah, exactly. All of those, which you want to be doing anyway.
Yeah, no, Rebecca was beating the squat drum with me. And I have to say,
I'm telling you, I know, I heard, I listened.
She was like, you must be doing squats. And I haven't added those in. I'm going to confess, but this is a good reminder. But I have been doing a lot of dynamic stability moves that she recommended, where you're standing on one leg and you're kind of bending forward and picking things up and looking side to side and sort of incorporating those types of things, probably because they're more fun than squats. But you're motivating me. I'm going to give it a try. So you have to do this. Are you doing this 2 to 3 times a week, you said? Or is this a daily activity? What's good?
Yes. And I have to say, though, it was in my mind at that time, because as I just said, strength training really wasn't a part of the training program for running at that time. But I was doing it anyway, because as I mentioned, I broke my arm. And then what happened there was then my daughter said, "Oh, I want to see you running the marathon." And I said, okay, I signed up for it. And I wanted to pull it all together, Katie. At that point, I said, I need a book. I need a book that's going to guide me on how to really be a great 50-plus-year-old person. Like, what should I be eating now? How should I be working out now? And all that stuff. And is my hair too long? And, blah, blah, blah. I had all these big questions because I wanted to be a great 50-year-old, right? Like a really great 50-year-old. And that book at that time, believe it or not, did not exist. It was all about anti-aging. Everything was still,
yes.
All the magazine articles were anti-aging. Everything was anti-aging. And I said, well, that's not what I'm looking for. I'm looking for positive aging, how to be the best you can be at that age, whatever age that is. And then I said, I'm going to write the book. And then that's when I wrote my first book.
I love
The Best of Everything. Is that crazy?
No, it's not crazy
It's so
to me at all.
funny to me how that happens. Like, I was in the shower one day, and then my other daughter, Sarah, who's not been a part of this big story yet, she just happened to be walking by, come out of the shower. And I said, Sarah, I just had an idea for a book because I can't find the book I need. I need a guide to this next stage in my life. And so I'm going to write that book.
Well, tell listeners the name of this book, because you've written 2 books. So tell us the names of both of them, Barbara.
And I'm writing my 3rd book right now. The first one was called The Best of Everything After 50, and it covered everything. And so what I did was, and the subtitle is The Expert's Guide to Style, Sex, Health, Money, and More. I literally went to every single great expert and said, okay, here I am. What should I do? And then I did it. And if it worked, then that made it into the book. You see, so Jeff Galloway was in it for moving the body. And then I had a guy named David Kirsch, who was a top tier fitness expert in Manhattan, who told me about the 3 things that I still do every single day, actually. 3 moves. Katie, you need to do these 3 moves every single day. It will not take you long.
I'm on the edge of my seat, Barbara. Keep going.
Ready?
Yes,
but
I'm
you
totally
already
ready.
know you already know.
Do they involve squats?
One of them. Oh, yes. One of them is squats.
Okay.
And there's like 2 different ways to do them, like with your feet out, like a puree or straight. Okay. But your butt has to be out as far as it can as you're lowering down, because that's what really helps to work your glutes. Okay. So squats, push-ups, and the plank.
All right.
This is 3. No, basic. But guess what?
I could do that.
You will get a full body workout. And that's what I did. And I never broke another thing. I even fell again at some point after that, after I embarked on all of this healthy living to be a great 50-plus-year-old. And I never broke a single thing. And in fact, I have been able, and I never went on hormone therapy. It's a bit of a regret. And I've said that publicly on my own show many, many times. Never went on hormone therapy. So therefore, my bone health was at great risk. And I do have osteopenia, but 17 years later, Katie, I still have not progressed because of all these things I started doing at 50.
That's such a great testament because Barbara, I'm glad you brought this up because that's really come up on the show before. I've recently had a number of doctors on, like Dr. Sharon Malone, who wrote Grown Woman Talk, and I had Dr. Jessica Shepard, who came on to help us sort of demystify some of the recent headlines around the benefits of HRT. And while both of those doctors are proponents of HRT and really encourage women to fully explore whether or not they can make that happen, because more women can use it than not, they both said that lifestyle choices around fitness and nutrition are key players in bone, brain, and cardiac health as well. We have more control than we think. And I love that 17 years later, you're going for Marathon 18 because you invested in all of these choices that do truly make a difference in your bone health. So thank you for sharing that with us. So this is a good way to maybe to segue into your show, Age Better, because you have a wonderful podcast that I've had the pleasure of being on. You really explore with a lot of great health professionals about how we can be doing things and making choices to age better. You talked to me. I'm not a health professional. You wanted to hear my perspective on positive aging and embracing our age. You talked to caregivers and a whole host of people. I really can recommend Barbara's wonderful podcast, Age Better. But I did want to ask you, I noticed that you recently had Joyce Schulman on the show. And for listeners of a certain age who don't know who Joyce is, she's a walking evangelist. She's written a book on walking. She's got a company that encourages people to walk. And I would love to hear a little bit about like your conversation with her and the takeaways, because for listeners right now who are thinking Barbara's inspiring, but I'm still not going to run a marathon, even though she makes it seem fun and relatively easy. Walking
and you
is
get
very,
a medal, everyone.
And you get a medal. Who doesn't want a medal? Who doesn't want a medal? But walking is sort of low barrier to entry. It's available to anyone. It's super fun. It can be super social. Tell us a little bit about this conversation and your biggest takeaway.
Right. And in fact, everyone, you should follow Joyce Schulman. She is just fantastic. I really love her. I'm a huge fan of hers. And she was on my show because she has been lifting weights since she was 18 years old and then started this. She's a lawyer by trade, but then started this company, 99 Walks. And you can find that on Instagram and Facebook and so on and so forth, and her website to get more info. But she still was recently diagnosed as having, like me, low bone density. And so she was in a state of shock because she does everything right. Everything.
Her life, her career and her life has been about movement.
Yeah. But hopefully she'll be able to, as I have done, be able to keep it in the osteopenia range and not let it progress to full-blown osteoporosis. But anyway, so that's where she is now. But the biggest takeaway that I always get from Joyce, because she's been on the show twice and we talk sporadically offline, is that moving is essential to everyone's health and fitness. You do not have to run. You do not have to run a marathon, even if you do like to run. You don't have to run any races, but moving throughout the day. I mean, I have so many experts on my show, Katie, on Age Better podcast, talking about that exact thing. And I keep bringing people on to kind of repeat that message. So the message penetrates people's brains that you just need to move. Like, let's take a look at the blue zones groups around the world that Dan Buettner from National Geographic has studied for so many years. They have so many things in common, and that's why they live so long and so healthfully, because they move throughout the day. They don't run. They don't go to a gym.
Right.
They do squats, Katie, but not on purpose. They do it because it's part of their daily life. They squat down to pick something up.
Barbara, we are coming out of the holiday weekend. My husband and I did 7 hours of gardening each day. I'm telling you.
There you go.
Talk about squats. I am sore just by doing a fun activity that I love. I love your point. You don't have to be at the gym. You could be out there gardening. That is a workout. I was ripping out some vines of ivy. That's upper body. I was going at it toe to toe with my ivy.
I can picture you doing that. And you were squatting, Katie. Yes, you were.
So
don't deny it.
Believe me. I got out of bed. I was like, ow, okay. All righty then.
Right? But you see the point. So that is really what Joyce says, keep moving. And she says something that's really very interesting to me. It's a nice little twist. And I really like this idea that she talks about is that if you're expecting to be motivated to get up and run or get up and take that 30-minute walk or whatever, if you'll be waiting forever. I mean,
yes.
I kind of would be, even though I love running now, I would kind of be lying if I said, oh, I would rather get up at 6 a.m. and go for an 18-mile run than sleep in or cuddle with my husband or fill in the blank. Do you know what I mean? I'm not always motivated to do this. Her whole point is the motivation comes once you start moving. And it's true. Once I'm actually doing, whether it's running or walking or strength training, I'm now motivated to keep going. I don't have any motivation to stop. Every once in a while I do, that's just human nature, of course. But that's a really important point. So don't feel like, oh my gosh, well, I'm not doing this because I don't feel motivated.
I don't enjoy it.
Get going,
right.
and it'll fall into
the
place.
Motivation and the enjoyment follows. That totally makes sense to me. All right, so let's talk about it.
But
yes,
wait, before we move off of that. So this is important. So she, 99 walks, it's like a membership thing, and you can join in. And we talked already about the importance of community. So she has created this nationwide community of walkers. And then she has a weekly kind of podcast that you listen to. It's a walk and talk. Very, very clever. So I really encourage everyone to check that out. However, all studies now show that walking is not enough. So even if you do that, and Joyce knows this too, you need to do the strength training.
Yeah,
there are
absolutely.
3 components. Before we move off to the next thing, Katie, I just want to point out 3 components to overall fitness. And that is cardio, running, walking, swimming, biking, whatever your choice is, strength training, and really important for all of us, especially at this stage in our lives, is balance practice. And I do that throughout the day. Someone asked me, I just was interviewed for a New York Times article that's coming out soon. And someone asked me, how do you do that? I said, it's so easy. You do it throughout the day. I'll be saying, just this morning, I was talking to my husband, having a cup of coffee, and I was standing on one foot.
Yes, I do that.
And then I swapped.
I do that as well.
Yeah.
And the dynamic balance that Rebecca really, I'm going to link back out to Rebecca's show. She talked a lot about balance and dynamic stability and all these different exercises. I think the Joyce Schulman podcast is super fun. I was a guest on her show too for the walk and talk. It was such a fun way to spend time. And I think it's a great show for listeners to kind of pop into their AirPods, listen to Barbara's Age Better, listen to Joyce's show, which is I think called 99 Walks as well, or Walk and Talk.
Yes.
And you can get really inspired. Okay, so let's switch gears for a minute. I want to talk about something that may be of interest to maybe some of the more advanced listeners on the show who have already been doing a running practice that may be looking to amp it up a bit. I saw that you recently did a show, and I'm hoping I'm pronouncing this correctly, on Chi running, right? Which sort of incorporates Tai Chi and the breath work that's so foundational to that form of exercise, and it kind of intersects it with running. So walk us through what this looks like.
Yeah, I had Danny Dreyer, who's the founder of Chi Running, and you said it correctly, Katie, on the show about a year ago. And he talked me through the whole method of focusing on your breathing as you're running or walking or whatever your activity is. So it really then turns your workout into even more of a meditative practice than you had maybe originally intended. And the focus on breathing is so important, especially when you're running. And then you adjust your effort level based on how you're breathing. And the whole goal is that as you become fitter, obviously you can put a greater effort into your activity and your breathing won't be labored, is the point. And it's all about nose breathing. And I now want to segue to another guest I had on my show who I just love. His name is Patrick McEwen, and he wrote a book about breathing, The Breathing Cure. And he's from Ireland. And I had him on the show because during my discussion with Danny Dreyer of Chi Running, he said, you've got to have Patrick McEwen on your show because so much of what I propose in my Chi Running is based on Patrick's whole, premise around proper breathing and improper breathing. Now, Patrick believes that there is a proper way to breathe and an improper way to breathe. And the number one most improper way to breathe is through your mouth.
Yes.
He said sleep apnea can be cured. And by the way, sleep apnea is a very big issue, surprisingly, maybe to some people listening.
In menopausal women.
Yes.
I learned that from Dr. Shelby Harris, who was on the show.
Mm-hmm.
It's funny, like menopause often gets, as Dr. Shepard said, typecast to the pelvis. We tend to think that menopause affects your reproductive health, but it affects so many things too, including,
oh my gosh, everything.
Like a greater incidence of sleep apnea. This is a good reminder that I actually want to do a show on that because I know so many women suffer. I've also learned from my practice of Bikram yoga, which they encourage you, it's all nose breathing. You're not allowed to open you do one quick breathing exercise and then you're not allowed to open your mouth for an hour. And it's simply all nose breathing. And it's challenging. It's definitely challenging. So is that the correct way is nose breathing? How are you nose breathing when you're running? It's the same thing, just...
Exactly. It is a challenge. And so I have trained myself to slow my pace down to, if I'm finding I can't breathe in and out through my nose any longer. So that's the adjustment that you have to, it's all about focus. It's all about focusing on what you're doing, being present, truly present in the moment. Because if you're not present in the moment and you're not really focused on what you're doing, then you're not really there. You're not really concentrating on what you're doing. And it just won't be as and how can you pay attention to how you're breathing then if you're not focused? You can't.
And does it have physiologic benefits beyond simply meditative qualities?
Yes, it does. Absolutely, because you're taking in, there's a whole big scientific thing that Patrick explained in our conversation on my podcast, but also that is in his book, The Breathing Cure, talking about what happens with your blood cell, red blood cells, your oxygen levels, your VO2 max, which is another super, super duper kind of lens through which one can look at their overall health and wellness. I don't want to go too deep into the weeds, but the answer is yes, it does affect you psychologically as well as physiologically, for sure.
I'm going to link out to that in the show notes so that people can go listen to that particular episode. And you have so many fascinating podcast guests. I encourage anyone who really wants to know more about running, but also just health in general to check out Barbara's show. All right, we are moving into our speed run because our time together is coming to an end. But I do want to say one last thing about marathoning. Doing the research for this show, I learned that the world's oldest marathon runner ran a marathon at the age of 100. I think his name is Fauja Singh. I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly.
That's correct. I have seen him on the course of the New York City Marathon.
You might even know this fun fact. Not only is he the oldest person to complete a marathon at the age of 100, he ran his very first marathon at 81. I mean, talk about goals, right? So I guess I should not count myself out. Listeners, do not count yourself out. If you've ever thought, I don't know, maybe I'm too old, Let Fauja Singh be your guide. 81. That's pretty incredible.
Amazing.
All right,
Incredible.
let's do this speed round. This is going to be easy for you because even though you're a slow runner, I know that you've worked up some endurance and some speed, and I know you're going to tackle this round like a boss. Okay. This is just 1 to 2 word answers. Last time you ran.
Yesterday.
Nice. Favorite running route in New York City.
Central Park.
This running destination is on my bucket list.
Tokyo.
Do you have a favorite warm-up stretch?
Oh, definitely. It's called the Monster Walk. It's a lateral monster walk. I guess everyone could Google it to see with an exercise band.
Oh, nice.
It's more, yeah. It's really, really good.
Sounds
before
hard.
and after. Mm-hmm.
How about a favorite cool down stretch?
Oh, lying on my back and then pulling my knees to my chest. Very yoga-ish to my chest, and then one knee to my chest and then the other one straight, and then I swap.
I love that stretch myself. Okay.
It's a great stretch for my lower back too.
Nice. Stability or balance exercise that helps keep you free of injuries.
Oh, stability or balance. Well, I think, like I said, anything with the core, anything to build your core is going to help with your balance and stability. So really the number one thing by far, the plank.
The plank. Okay, great.
Absolutely.
You are at work on a third book. You mentioned it. Can we get a sneak peek of what it will cover? What's the topic?
Yeah. Probably one of the hottest topics around, menopause.
Ooh, okay, great. Well, I'm here for that one. Okay, finally, your 1-word answer to complete this sentence. As I age, I feel
ready.
Ready. I love it. Barbara, thank you so much. This has been a total blast. I'm not sure I'm going to run a marathon, but I'm definitely going to go check out the Galway program and see if I can at least get myself out there for like my town's turkey trot, which I usually walk.
Turkey trots are great.
Okay. So before we say goodbye, how can our listeners find you and your work and keep up with what you're up to?
Thank you. BarbaraHannahGrufferman.com, and also on all social media, I'm Barbara Hannah Grufferman.
Thank you, Barbara.
You can find me on all of those things. Thank you. Katie, it was so much fun. Thank you.
It was fun.
Thanks for tuning in, everyone. If you enjoyed this episode of Age Better Podcast, please do a few things. First, share it with all your friends and family. Then, subscribe to Age Better wherever you listen to podcasts, including YouTube, so you never miss a single episode. Finally, if you have ideas for topics you want me to cover in a future episode of Age Better, send an email to agebetterpodcast@gmail.com or reach out to me on social media. Until next time, remember this: we can't control getting older, but we can control how we do it. Talk to you soon. Age Better Podcast is a proud member of the Sound Advice Network. Sound Advice, women's voices amplified.